Your next reading is Introduction to Risk Management. Now, what is risk? Well, risk is any exposure to uncertainty, or you can say any chance of loss or any chance of adverse outcome, or in other words, just variability. That's what we say is risk. Now, what is risk management? Risk management, these are the decisions taken to achieve the maximum risk-adjusted return. Risk management doesn't mean avoiding risk. The overall goal is to maximize the firm's value. So what we risk managers follow, we follow the doctrine of no surprises. We want to be prepared for everything. So it's not about avoiding risk or risk aversion. We are more interested in establishing possible future scenarios and putting in place measures to mitigate unfavorable outcomes. That is risk management. Just not running away from risk, rather taking decisions in such a way that to maximize the firm's value and not be surprised and mitigate unfavorable outcomes. That's the idea of risk management. Okay, now this is there are two approaches to risk management. This approach, as you can see, is called the silo-based approach. Each risk is managed separately: your financial risk, credit risk, inflation risk, interest rate risk, operational risk. So each risk is managed individually. But when there is an integrated approach, holistic approach, risk is managed in an institutionalized way. Risk management can be disorganized, also called the enterprise-wide. So here we have an ERM system where we manage risk for the organization as a whole. Next is describe features of a risk management framework. Well, it all starts from risk governance. What is risk governance? Basically, it's the top level system of structures and policies so as to achieve the goals set by the board of directors, and management develops strategies to achieve these goals. So this risk governance, it is highly influenced by the regulatory concerns and as well as the fiduciary duty of the board of directors, because they are fiduciaries. They are responsible to take care of the interest of the stakeholders, especially the shareholders. And for best results, the risk governance should take an enterprise-wide view rather than this fragmented approach. So we are more concerned with enterprise risk management. Risk tolerance basically is the extent to which the organization is ready, prepared to experience losses, just in an effort to achieve the organizational goals and objectives. Next, risk budgeting. Well, from the point of view of portfolio management, from investment point of view, risk budgeting is a type of portfolio allocation in which the risk of the portfolio is distributed among various asset classes with the objective of maximizing total portfolio return while keeping the total portfolio risk at the minimum. Risk exposures. Well, risk exposures are the measures of potential future loss resulting from a specific activity or from a specific event. So, is the risk in line with our strategies? Yes, then monitor risk. If no, then we will adopt some risk mitigation technique or risk reduction technique so be able to achieve our goals, or sometimes we may have to modify our strategies. Let us discuss the other components as well: risk identification and risk measurement. What we do, we analyze our environment so as to identify the relevant risk factors. Analysis of the environment, so we can identify relevant risks that we might be facing. Then we analyze our portfolio to ascertain that whether it is indeed exposed to the risk identified, whether the portfolio is exposed to the risk that we have identified. Then we will develop a risk matrix so as to manage the risk in different scenarios under different stressed situations. Then risk infrastructure or risk management infrastructure. It refers to the people and systems that will carry out the risk management process. It may include technology solutions capable of capturing, storing, computing, and it may include certain reporting systems that are necessary, as well as skilled personnel to run this process. Then policies and processes. Policies and processes include day-to-day operations and decision-making process. It may involve controlling cash flows in line with risk assessment. It may involve conducting due diligence of potential investments. It may involve ensuring decisions made include important checklist, and it may involve ensuring data is updated and protected. Then we have a risk monitoring system, risk monitoring, mitigation and management. Well, risk monitoring involves continuous assessment as to whether the existing exposure is in line with the established risk tolerance level set here, right? And if not, if it's not up to the risk tolerance level, then action must be taken to realign the exposure. Otherwise, we might put our business in trouble. Then an important element is reporting, risk reporting, communication. So communication risk reporting regime is very essential to ensure that the governance parameters can be clearly communicated to the managers. Reporting of risk matrix to decision maker is done in a clear and timely manner so that they can take appropriate decision on a timely fashion. And these reports must be written in clear, easy to understand language so that it will be easier for management to take some steps. And then an important part is strategic analysis. This will help turn risk management into an offensive weapon to improve performance, to beat the market. So rigorous analysis will be done, and this will support better investment decisions, and it will also improve our strategy and risk adjusted return. Your next LOS is define risk governance and describe elements of effective risk governance. So we discussed risk governance in our previous reading, and we have discussed also the elements of effective risk governance in detail. So basically, what is risk governance? It's the top level system of structures and policies, and a system that ensures risk management activities align and they support the overall enterprise. And as I said, it was driven by the regulatory concerns, and it also involves some responsibility on the part of directors, the fiduciary responsibility that they have towards the shareholders. And as I said in the previous slide, that it is good for the firm to have a risk governance system that takes an enterprise-wide view rather than a silos-based view. So I think this LOS is totally covered in our previous LOS, so no need to do it separately. Let us do this now. Explain how risk tolerance affects risk management. Risk tolerance we discussed earlier. What is risk tolerance? Risk tolerance is the extent to which the organization is prepared to experience loss, ready to take on loss, fine, in the effort to achieve the organizational objective. So that's what you call risk tolerance. So this risk tolerance must be integrated in our internal and external analysis for decision making purpose. Dependency of risk tolerance. Risk tolerance depends upon various factors. First, the ability to respond dynamically to changing events around you that are taking place, the ability to withstand losses and still remain as a going concern, and the competitive landscape where you are operating, and finally the regulatory environment in which you are operating. And finally, what should not be a part of risk tolerance determination? Important. Personal motivations of the directors, personal beliefs of the manager directors, agendas of board members, management compensation, they should not be a factor into risk tolerance determination. It's a very important point. Next, Describe risk budgeting and its role in risk governance. We discussed risk budgeting previously a bit. We discussed this in our framework. So risk budgeting is focused on implementing the risk tolerance decision taken at a strategic or governance level in our day-to-day management decision making. So risk budgeting basically will quantify the risk by specific matrix and allocate risk across the organization. So basically, a risk could be simple versus complex. Simple risk means the risk that can be measured using standard deviation or value at risk or beta or scenario analysis. A more complex risk might require the measurements such as evaluating risk by their underlying risk classes such as equity, fixed income, commodity risk, and so on, and then allocate our investment by their risk class. Then the benefit of risk budgeting. The first benefit is that by implementing risk budget, a risk culture is created in which all decisions are evaluated with a risk-return trade-off in mind. Put your food where your mouth is. Management is focused on adding value to the overall enterprise when taking decisions, while at the same time remaining within the desired risk tolerance level. So you will be deploying your resources most efficiently and most effectively. And it will also lower the cost of capital. A business that has a robust risk management system will attract investment from various sources, and eventually it will lower your cost of capital. Next is identify financial and non-financial sources of risk and describe how they may interact. First, let us discuss the financial risks. First, financial is the market risk. Financial risk, basically, we're discussing first financial risk. Financial risk originate from financial markets. So they include market risk. What is a market risk? Market risk arises from movements within the financial market, like share prices going up and down, interest rates, exchange rates, commodity prices, and other economic or industry market factors. Credit risk. Credit risk is the risk of loss due to the failure of one party to pay another an outstanding obligation, defaulting on loans, for example. Liquidity risk, it's the inability to be able to convert your asset into cash without incurring significant costs. Right? So in stressed market conditions, for example, the seller may have to accept a price well below their perception of value. You may have to provide significant discount in selling that particular asset. Then we have, these are all the financial risks. Now let's discuss the non-financial risks. First is the settlement risk. So remember, non-financial risks are from outside of the financial market environment and could be as a result of environmental or perhaps regulatory changes, or maybe an issue with customers or suppliers. So first, settlement risk. Settlement risk arises when payments are not exchanged simultaneously. The simplest case is when a bank makes a payment to a counterparty but will not be recompensated until some time later. Right? So the risk that the counterparty may default before making the counterpayment is what you call the settlement risk. Then we have the legal risk, the change in laws. Maybe someone files a case against you, or you file a case against someone. So it involves litigation. Compliance risk, the risk of failure to follow the laws, rules, and obligation, or failure to adhere to laid down rules and obligation. Compliance risk, quite self-explanatory. Then model risk. Model risk arises when you use inappropriate models or inputs. Then the tail risk. Tail risk, just we discussed in our hypothesis testing, is the likelihood or probability of material negative outcome. Operational risk, related to the people and processes of an organization. Fraud committed by an employee, by management. Operational errors on day-to-day work. Interruption due to natural phenomena like floods and fires, not a natural phenomena, wild blazes, etc. And then we have solvency risk. Solvency risk is the risk that the company may run out of cash to fund its operations. Now the next question, do financial and non-financial risk interact? How they interact? Yes, they do interact. They do interact. In times of market stress, the correlation among financial and non-financial risks increases. So the result is that the combined risk is often far more than the sum of financial and non-financial. Now let's take an example. Let's say we have to receive some money from A, and A fails to settle the obligation in a timely manner. This is a settlement risk. So the settlement risk creates a solvency risk for me, because if I do not receive money from my customers, how will I be able to make payments that I have to make in the normal course of business? So in turn, I may not be able to pay my suppliers, which might lead to a legal risk. So it all started from settlement risk, which eventually rose the solvency risk for me. If I do not pay my suppliers on time, I might run in trouble. There might be some legal issues, legal risk, right? Or I may not be able to meet the regulatory solvency requirements, so it might create a compliance risk for me. And then finally, it all may result in falling prices of assets, and it might result in liquidity risk. So these risks are combined, as you can see in this example. Then we have commonly used risk matrices. First is the standard deviation. We are familiar with this term from our quantitative aspects of your readings. So standard deviation, also called volatility, it provides a measure of range of potential outcomes. It has limitations as a measure for financial markets, as it assumes a normal distribution of returns which may not be appropriate in many circumstances. Next is beta. Beta is a measure of sensitivity of a security returns to the overall market portfolio. It provides an indication of systematic risk and is particularly appropriate of equity portfolios. We discussed in detail. Then we have certain collection of Greeks delta. So Greeks are basically collections of associated risk related to derivative positions. So first is delta. Delta measures the sensitivity to changes in the underlying price of an asset. Then we have gamma. It measures sensitivity to change in the delta. Then we have vega. It measures the sensitivity to changes in volatility. And then we have rho, which is expressed with this sign, is a measure of sensitivity to changes in the interest rate. And then we have a very important measure, duration. Duration is a measure of sensitivity to interest rate used for fixed income securities. Then we also have an important measure, value at risk. I'm sure you would know, VR specifies the maximum loss that could possibly be incurred at a given level of confidence, right? For instance, if the annual 95% VAR of a portfolio is $100 million, the firm is said to be 95% confident that the loss incurred, if ever, will not exceed 100 million. In other words, there is a 5% chance that if a loss is experienced over the next year, it will exceed 100 million. We discussed in detail in our quants. Then we have conditional VAR, also called CVAR. It is the expected shortfall, called the expected shortfall. It's the expected loss beyond VAR. It is sometimes referred to as loss given default. Okay, then we have the last LOS. It says describe methods for measuring and modifying risk exposures and factors to consider in choosing among methods. The first risk modification is risk avoidance. Risk avoidance is straightforward. These are basically the options a firm has on measures of risk. Risk avoidance is the firm effectively shelves investment plans and discontinues the existing exposure. You just run away from that investment. Avoid it. That's risk avoidance. Risk acceptance. The firm accepts a risk and proceeds to make an investment. It's also sometimes called self-insurance. Risk transfer. The firm accepts the risk but then transfers it to the third party, for example, an insurer. And then finally, risk shifting, and it's not the same as risk transfer. Risk shifting is all risk mitigation. The firm accepts and attempts to mitigate the risk, usually through the use of derivatives. So that completes your reading Introduction to Risk Management.